WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Darrell C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Simon Rios.
Hey, Darrell. Good to be here, man.
Awesome to have you. Now, you are a WBUR reporter. Not a specific reporter, because you report on various things, a lot of things, and you do it well.
We do basketball, we do housing, a little bit of this, wherever the story's at, Darrell.
Right. And I want to ask you about the housing thing because from what I understand, that's your jam.
Indeed. Housing matters.
Yes, it does. So with that said, what is a mobile home?
Good question. Way to start it off, because you might assume that a mobile home is a home that's mobile, when in fact, they're really not mobile. Typically, they start their lives in a factory somewhere in the Midwest, and then they're trucked to any one of these thousands of mobile home parks all across the country. There's about 250 of them in Massachusetts. So they get trucked there on an 18-wheeler, and they get installed on a foundation, and they typically spend the rest of their lives there because, especially once they start to get older, they're not roadworthy anymore. So it can be prohibitively expensive to move them if you have to. And then the second problem is that there's very few vacancies at other parks if you do have to move. So mobile homes, we might need a better word for them. They're also known as manufactured homes. That might be more accurate.
Okay. You know what? Little fun fact. I grew up next to a mobile home park. You're bringing me back. Anyways, thank you for that clarification, because I want to talk to you about a story, actually two stories you just did, about how mobile homes in the state over the last few years, investors have been buying up these properties left and right. And it's not just in Massachusetts. It's a nationwide trend, but you're covering what's going on in Massachusetts. And I understand you looked at two different Massachusetts mobile home parks that faced buyout offers from investors.
Correct.
And you found that there were two different outcomes, right?
Right. So I had heard that this trend of corporate buyouts of mobile home parks was happening across the country, particularly in areas with hot real estate markets. And so I heard about this, and I wanted to know what the situation was in Massachusetts. How many parks did the state have? And were they being targeted by investors the way we had heard stories of in other parts of the country? And it turns out that no doubt there's about 250 parks in the state. Right now, about 24 of them are owned by corporate investors.
You looked at two mobile home parks that faced buyouts. What did you find?
Yeah, so I visited a park in Wareham down by the Cape and also a park in Revere, and the two stories were like diametrically opposed. But in Wareham, we're going back like 5 or 6 months now, every resident in the park received a letter in the mail saying that the park was going to be purchased by this Arizona real estate investment company for $12.1 million. And so that threw a wrench into people's plans. I mean, many of these people, it's like they own their homes there and they're planning to spend the rest of their lives. Like a lot of the folks that I talked to. And so all of a sudden, that's thrown into question. So some corporation is going to take over from the mom and pop owners who have owned the place for decades. What's that going to mean for us? And they started searching for answers.
Okay, what happened next?
So here's the thing. In Massachusetts, there's something called a right of first refusal for mobile home residents. This exists in a few other states as well. But basically, it was a law written in the 1990s that gives mobile home park residents the first shot at buying a place when it goes up for sale. So this offer came in, $12.1 million. That accounted for about $80,000 per home in Royal Crest and Wareham. And it was like, how are we going to possibly come up with that much money? But it turns out there's a whole sector of nonprofit organizations, local and national, that really come in when residents are facing this kind of situation, help them to determine if they're capable of taking over a park, putting together the finances, forming a cooperative, which is something that's required, and financing and ultimately maintaining a park.
And how did they raise the money?
So through traditional lending, I mean, they were able to get a bank loan. Another important thing here is that for the first time, Massachusetts has a thing called the Affordable Housing Fund, and that's used typically to allow nonprofits or communities to buy affordable housing so that it ensures that it's affordable going forward. That's never been used for mobile home parks, but interestingly, the residents and their advocates in the legislature, Senator Mark Pacheco has been a real leader in the mobile home world. They were able to convince the Baker administration that, hey, this really is affordable housing. It might not be subsidized or meet the technical definition, but look at the people who live there. It's affordable housing for them. And it really is. Like some people say, this is the last bastion of naturally occurring affordable housing. And so they were able to convince the state to chip in $2 million.
It makes me wonder, are some parks more vulnerable than others if they have more people who might be considered low income, if those parks are more vulnerable to buyouts than others?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, they're all vulnerable because the residents, they don't have any say unless they own the parks. They own their homes and they rent the land underneath them. So The owners of the parks, no matter if it's a park that's in shambles and, residents who are really struggling or on assistance, or if it's a middle class setting like at Royal Crest and Wareham, maybe if they're in a better position individually, financially, the residents might have more wherewithal to come together and join forces to buy the park. As a matter of fact, I think that's a good point, that in Wareham, it's a much more stable middle-class community, and the people were able to, with the help of these nonprofits, come together and buy the park. In Revere, it was a completely different story. In that case, the residents were much more downtrodden. There's a lot of crime, a lot of drug use. There was an effort for the residents to buy the park. Some of the residents came together and formed a co-op, but they weren't able to convince their neighbors that they were capable of doing it. So what happened was the residents didn't buy it. The new owner came in and started clearing them out, started paying people to leave, crushing trailers right in front of them. And I came across this as I was reporting the Wareham story, and I asked the same question that you did, what happens under corporate ownership? And I came to this place in Revere that shows exactly what can happen. They can come and buy up the parks and clear them out to make new developments.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back. So it sounds like, to me, with this park in Revere, it kind of puts into focus what happens during gentrification. You're seeing a more raw version of that, of property in a vulnerable neighborhood being bought right up underneath you and basically being destroyed. The culture being destroyed, people being pushed out.
Absolutely.
But you may not see that in a city in the same way as you would see it in this trailer park where, like you said, people's homes are being destroyed right in front of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, look, this park in Revere, it's called Lee's Trailer Park, and it's set off Revere Beach Parkway, if you know that area, right near the police station. It's a very secluded little community, and it seems like the people who were there were just treated like dirt. I mean, this one story of this one individual who, I should say, according to neighbors, he signed papers agreeing to leave, but he didn't leave as he was supposed to. Apparently, he was outside of his trailer when the company came through, the company that owns the park or some of their subcontractors came through and crushed his trailer right in front of him.
Oh, my God.
And that's just one story. You know, that guy happens to be, I'll say, in very rough shape. He was in the hospital last time I heard, not necessarily connected to these events at Lee's Trailer Park. But there was another case of a woman whose husband is on oxygen and he had a heart attack recently. And he's in the hospital. They're still in the park facing possible eviction. They don't know where they're going to go. The stress of having to leave and everything that's going on was too hard on him. And that's a story I've heard elsewhere, by the way, that when parks are cleared, there's a lot of older people there in bad health. And then it can be so traumatic for them that they literally die.
Oof. Okay, so that's Revere. And you told us about Wareham. These are two mobile home parks that face buyouts. Got two different results, right? Revere, the more low income and more vulnerable mobile home community, was not able to save its park, while Wareham, the one that's in a better position, more financially stable, was able to secure the assistance it needed. I wonder, how can other mobile home parks replicate this success, particularly those that might be more similar to the one in Revere?
Look, I mean, talking to the advocates at Rock USA in New Hampshire and the Cooperative Development Institute, they want to be more proactive in the sense of don't wait until some investor comes in and puts up a multi-million-dollar offer that, by the way, can hugely increase or inflate the value of a park. Don't wait until that happens. Learn about your rights now, and you be the one to approach, as the residents, as a community, you be the one to approach the mom and pop owners who might want to get out after decades in the business. But they stress that it's a lot of work. You know, you have to form the co-op, you have to get the financing, you have to really fix the park, like conduct engineering studies to find everything that needs to be fixed and then finance that work, and then indefinitely manage a co-op. And so the residents need to be up for that. And that might partially explain why this process of community ownership did not play out in Revere, is because many of the residents just weren't up for it. It's going to differ from community to community, whether they're willing to put in the work, whether they're able to raise the money and make it happen. But going back to the activists, they want the communities to know, at the very least, that it is an option for them to buy their communities.
Okay. Now, can anything be done at the legislative level?
Yeah, like I said, there's a law passed back in the 90s that set up the right of first refusal, but advocates have been pushing for changes for a number of years now. They want to make it much harder for something like Revere, Lee's Trailer Park, to happen again in the future. And there's still a lot of open questions about that. Talking to some of the people who have been active in the park, some of the advocates, they want to know, and this is something I want to know too, is how the owner got the permission to redevelop the park in the first place. The city of Revere wasn't talking to me at all. I asked for multiple requests for interviews with the mayor. They would just ignore that. The developer wouldn't talk to me either. They gave me a brief comment. The reason I raise that is because the law specifies that a government body has to sign off on what they call the discontinuance of use for a mobile home park. But in any case, advocates think that the law that exists isn't strong enough. It doesn't specify what government body has to sign off on the discontinuance of a mobile home park. Like any law that was written decades ago, it needs to be updated. So they're hoping that some renewed attention on the state of mobile home parks will push the legislature to do something maybe as early as this coming session.
Got it. Well, let's check back in on that, because I'm very curious to know what happens. So
Absolutely. I'm planning on it.
Oh, yeah. Well, Simone, thanks again, man. Appreciate this.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate you.
That's WBUR reporter Simon Rios. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. Please make sure to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at WBUR The Common, or shoot us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. In the meantime, I'm your host, Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.